How's it going? Hope you're having a great week and making a ton of money with your Google Ads. This is going to be a really good video. It's a very hot topic right now, really how to scale out a performance max campaign and what is the right strategy put in place when you do that. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have the right strategy or the right core foundation of how you're building the campaign, PMAX is one of the most temperamental campaigns there are right now. So if you don't build it the right way, the results are going to be pretty much like as low as it gets, and you're going to feel really stumped as far as like, why can't I scale this out more? So highly recommend watching this full video. It might be a little longer, but the value and the information that's going to be in this one is what we do every day with our clients. We know this stuff works because we've been testing it the last like 6 months with PMAX, because PMAX is making our clients so much money that we want to really put as much attention as possible to see how we can scale it out at the highest level. So just jumping in, this is really based more so on the e-com side right now, because with PMAX, if you don't know a lot about PMAX, it's Google's omnipresent campaign. It's going to show on search, it's going to show on display, YouTube, discovery, pretty much most of Google's placement channels. And that's pretty prevalent for ecom because there's going to be a lot of product placements that you want to do. It's also what took over shopping. If you weren't running Google at the time, they did a forced migration between shopping and essentially PMAX. I think it was probably about November where they actually forced the migration, but you can still run shopping campaigns, but they're very de-incentivized, right? So if you do run them and try to kind of go against the flow of what Google wants you to do, they're generally going to make the results a bit more negative. So a lot of the shopping action they do now is in PMAX, just because Google is rolling out most of the placements and action to that. So jumping in, we have the ad strategy background. So when it comes to this, I know it sounds simple, but you got to follow Google's best practices. This is pretty much the most important tip, I would say, when it comes to their algorithm type campaigns. You got to play their game, even if you want to run it a certain way. If you fight against what they want, it's just going to pretty much make the scaling of the campaign cumbersome. So I'd really recommend play their game, make sure you're building the campaign out the way they want it to be built out. That's generally going to yield the best results. This is an algorithm based campaign, so it's not going to let you scale past what it feels like it can scale if it doesn't have the right assets or information to do so. That's going to be a big part of this slide deck too. So I'll get into that. There's going to be a lot of meat and potatoes when it comes to what you want to actually do with the campaign and how you're going to want to build it out. But the beginning is going to be a bit on the explanation side. So how it works, algorithm based smart bidding technology, it's all going to be based off of the feed and the data feedback that you're putting back into it. So the better data and the better feed information you can give it, the more it's going to scale out and the easier time it's going to have to scale because it needs that data to essentially thrive. So one of the things is going to be on the conversion side, making sure it has the right conversion data. If it doesn't have the right conversion data, you're not going to have a good time trying to run this campaign because it bases a lot of how it scales out, on that. So really make sure that you are tracking properly, because if you don't have that, it's not going to work well. One of the tips that we give is use the app Simprosis with Shopify. We've tested a lot of different tracking tools. We've done custom coding ourselves. We've used Google's app channel. Simprosis wins pretty much 9 out of 10 times. Sometimes you get a unique store that works well with some other ones, but pretty much most of the time Simprosis is the winner. So definitely recommend trying that out. Next thing is going to be one, it replaced Google Shopping, which I already mentioned, but it shows on all these different placements and channels listed below. If we jump into here, so this is a good visualization of how it works. There's going to be, I'll kind of show you with my mouse. There's going to be the creative assets. There's going to be the merchant center feed, the signals and brand. I don't know if the right word's necessarily safety there, but the brand information you're going to give it of who's currently buying with your store. The location you're going to target, simple enough. And then the campaign goals you're going to go after, whether it's going after a target ROAS or whatever bidding model you're using. If you have the wrong campaign goals in there, it's usually going to play by what you're telling it. So if you say, I want minimum 150% ROI, which most people wouldn't do that, right? But if you tell them that, it's going to go after that. So make sure you have the base level of ROI in the bidding model that you want there, because that's how it's going to base who it's going to go after when it comes to conversion buckets of traffic. So, and then you can see in here just a fun little diagram of the placements it's going to show on. There's going to be Google, YouTube, Discovery, Maps, Search, Display, and so on. So why does this work? It's really interesting to see this, but PMAX is taking over a very heavy amount of revenue that's pulling into our clients' accounts. We're seeing it a lot of the times it's pulling in like 50 to 60% of the revenue because of how many placements it can show on, and then also how high it can scale. So if you aren't at that level yet, it's kind of good news, because that means that there's a bit of a way to go when it comes to the revenue you can make for your store. There's going to be things you got to work through, but you're really probably not doing it right unless you're pulling in a decent amount of revenue into the store, usually about 30 to 50%. So when it comes to the campaign, most successful when it's being ran how Google intended to be ran. I already made that point, but it's really important to emphasize, because if you do it the opposite way, it's just going to get clunky. It's not going to run how it should be ran. It's not going to scale out how it should be scaled out. So pretty simple message there, but take that to heart. Leveraging Google's best practices. So higher ad rank, you're going to get lower CPMs, you're going to get higher ROI, dominant impression share. It's basically going to reward you across the board if you do what it tells you to do. So maximizing ad creatives. This is one of the more tedious parts of the campaign, but it's one of the most important things that's allowed us to scale out these campaigns, is just building out tons of asset groups when it comes to relevant product categories and different types of topics that you'd be running for your store. So if you have 15 different types of categories of products in your store, you want an asset group of each of those, so it has the right pictures, it has the right headlines, YouTube videos, all the other creatives that can fit into that campaign. The more you can give it and the more you can max out, the better it's going to do. So there's a couple other topics there, like segmenting by campaign and making sure they don't touch each other. That's something that we'll probably get into in a more specific part of PMAX strategy. But when it comes to this one, just make sure that you have all the ad creatives that you can give it for the products and the categories you're running, because it needs that to run at its max efficiency. And then that's pretty much a simple point that I just mentioned. You give it what it needs, it's going to reward you. So ad signaling. This is a side of the campaigns that confuses a lot of people. A lot of people don't really understand what it is. You're basically giving Google's PMAX campaign a signal of who is more inclined to convert. So you're basically telling them, people who are in these, in-market audiences, custom audiences, affinity audiences, whatever they are, whether you're selling tents and you're targeting people who are outdoorsy, right? You're going to want to give them those pointers to show what type of traffic they want to go after first, because it's going to give them a head start. And part of that too is going to be your store data too. So people who are currently converting, people are going to the website. You want to show Google who's already working, because it has tons of data points you don't even know about. If you show them who's converting, it's probably going to find people who are similar to those people, get them to your website and make you more money. Let's see. And then we have, don't go too broad. So this is important because relevancy is big, not in the sense as Google's going to punish you, if you have the wrong signals in there, but you're going to punish yourself, because if you put the wrong too broad of signals, it's going to start showing to the wrong type of people. It's going to go too broad. You're going to have lower ROIs. You're going to have less scalability. So really pay attention to the data you're feeding it, because it's going to really base the traffic it's going after on that data. So next thing is going to be merchant feed. This is more on the shopping side. Merchant feed is like the tire to the car when it comes to shopping placements. A big part of it's going to be the picture, title, description, right? You need the right information within those, because it's going to be pulling that for the relevancy, whether you have keyword data in the titles, benefits and keyword information in the actual description. That all has to be congruent with the actual keywords you're targeting and the placements it's going after, because if it's not, you're going to usually get outbid or outplaced by other competitors. So you really want to make sure you have a cleaned out merchant feed before you run a strong PMAX campaign, because it's really basing where it's going to show, what it's going to show, how often it's going to show your products for, off of the information that it gets from your actual merchant feed. So next thing is going to be importance of website optimization. So when it comes to the website, it's tricky because PMAX does not give you the control to show like who you're sending, or not necessarily who, but where you're sending people to your website. It's dynamic, right? So it's going to send people to where it deems is relevant. So if it's a certain product, it's probably going to send to the product page. If it's a category of products, it might send to the category page, right? So you really want to make sure the actual entirety of the website's pretty optimized, CRO, built out well, because it's not going to give you the control of exactly where to send it. So you don't want just like one amazing product page that converts really well. You need all the pages on your site to do well, because you're not going to be able to control where the traffic goes. And if you can't do that and they go to poorly built pages, they're usually going to have a harder time converting, a lower ROI. So next thing is going to be scaling your campaign. I think this is the last slide too. Yes. So scaling your campaign is a little tricky. It's like, riding a wave if you're surfing, trying to reel in a fish. There's a fine line between how fast you can go and how well the campaign is going to do. A lot of the times we're going to usually increase the budget in increments about 10 to 50%, depending on how well it's doing. If it's absolutely killing it, it's like immediately spending the day's budget and you're getting a killer ROI, you're going to be able to scale it a lot faster. But when you get to the point where results start diminishing a little bit, that's when you want to slow down with the percentage increments, because there's going to be a certain point with all variables you have running where it's not going to let you scale further. If you try to scale further, it's going to just like destroy and tank the campaign. We see it time and time after again. And it's not a bad thing getting to that stage, because you need to hit that stage to know how high you can scale the campaign. It's just a matter of when you get to that stage, you really need to pay attention, because you cannot keep scaling at that point. You need to pull back the actual budget to the last bump up that it was at, that it was scaling out well. Because if you don't do that, it's not going to usually recover on its own. Google does a bit of a funny thing. When you give it too much money to where it doesn't know the exact type of traffic to go after, it's going to go after like all types of different types of broad traffic. And it's going to water down the entirety of the budget being used. It's not only going to hurt the next bump up of budget you're going after, but it's going to skew the entire amount of budget you're scaling before that point and send it to a lot of times poor traffic, which is not going to convert. So be careful when you get to that point, pull back. And when you do get to that point, work on the other things around the campaign, whether it's other assets on the website, the CRO, the landing page, assets within the PMAX campaign. You need new variables in place before you keep scaling, simple as that. So be mindful as you scale. If you do this right, you're going to have a ton of availability to scale, because PMAX is a winning campaign in the Google's network. If you can dump money on it, just be careful, because if you give it too much, it's going to destroy the campaign, and it's going to take time to rebuild that. So tread carefully, but if you do it right, there's a lot of money to be made. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below. We'll get to them. If you have any technical questions, we love them. We'll give you the best answer we possibly can. We've done it all. We've tested it all. So don't make the mistakes that we've had to go through to find the results we can get. We're happy to give that information to you. Otherwise, have a great day. Thanks for watching.